Hello there, this is Joel with LoadTrek. It is 12:58 Central Time. We will be starting in 2 minutes. I see we have quite a few in the room already. If you could, just type a Y in the chat box. Let me know that the audio is okay. Thank you, appreciate it. Well, good afternoon from beautiful downtown Arlington, Texas. We're glad you're here. My name is Joel. I'm with LoadTrek, and welcome to this educational session on automating and validating driver pay. Like to thank you for attending. We've got a lot of people in here today, so this might make it a little short on questions. However, go ahead and get your questions in. If I can't get to them during the webinar, and there's a pretty good chance I can't, then email me your question, and I'll respond to you after the webinar. You can email those questions to the email's up on the screen, joelbeal@loadtrek.net. joelbeal@loadtrek.net. So thank you for joining, and let's just kind of talk about today's subject, which is accurate driver pay. This is something we've always done at LoadTrek. This was a key from the very beginning. However, we're emphasizing it a little more these days just because of what's going on out in the industry. Controlling your budget and improving driver morale are the top reasons fleets give us for automating driver pay. And it used to be we had to encourage our customers to start automating their payroll. Let's make everyone's life easier. And now the shoe's on the other foot. And our customers, if they're not doing it already, are telling us they want to go. Predictable and accurate driver pay is a key to a successful fleet. Driver morale improves. You can control your budget. There's a lot of good things from predictable driver pay, because isn't it really all about the driver? All we hear about these days is the driver shortage. Back when I was a dispatcher and manager, we talked about a driver shortage, but it's nothing like it is now, and the trends are all pointing in the not so good direction. So think about it. Why do we come up with so many pay for activity schemes? Private fleets, and we have a number of private fleets on the call today. Thank you for joining us. Private fleets always used to pay by the hour. They were great jobs, they paid by the hour. And then over the years, starting about 20 years ago, private fleets started introducing ABC pay, activity-based compensation, where you paid by the piece unloaded, paid by the stop, paid a little extra for a stair stop as opposed to a dock stop, as opposed to a lift gate stop, as opposed to a side door stop, and all these different schemas to incentivize drivers to work harder and faster. In the truckload sector, the tank truck industry is where I come from specifically, but in general, the truckload sector is always paid by the mile, and that's fine. But if you think about it, both schemas encourage bad behavior. On one hand, I tell you to operate safely. I tell you to operate within hours of service. I tell you to not go quite so fast up and down the ramp with your 8 cases of steaks. I tell you to drive the speed limit. Yet on the other hand, I'm paying you to work faster and harder. It creates a tension with the driver. So in many cases, left unmonitored, these pay schemes can contribute to higher injuries and more on-road violations. So accurate, predictable driver pay has a lot of advantages for a lot of fleets. It may or may not for you, but it certainly does for many fleets. Furthermore, many of our LoadTrek customers must comply with the Service Contract Act, the SCA. And in these cases, accurate driver pay is really, really important. So let's talk about this a little bit. Department of Labor compliance. We never used to hear much about this in the truckload sector, not so much in the private sector. It's always been an issue with government contractors. But now we're seeing a very active Department of Labor. Some states more so than others. Federal government is certainly more active in DOL than it used to be. And accurate pay is really from the time that the driver begins work to the time the driver ends work, minus any breaks in the middle. It's actually quite simple, but without proper documentation, it's very hard to prove anybody's case. So we believe DOL compliance is important. It certainly supports audits, whether they're DOT or DOL audits. Department of Transportation audit always looks at pay records to validate hours of service. Even in this day and age of electronic driver logs, they still want to see driver timesheets. Electronic driver logs can be fudged, and timesheets supposedly always tell the truth. And then lastly is accurate benefits administration. And I will tell you, I have a guest panelist today, so if we get any hard questions, I'm going to send them over to Tony. Tony Garza is joining us from FCE. Their business is all about Service Contract Act, benefits administration, accurate pay. That's their business. And I won't get into that other than to say that SCA and ACA management and reporting is a big deal. Accurate W-2s, 1095s are a big deal. Compliance with the Affordable Care Act is complicated and is a big deal. COBRA, Family Medical Leave Act, all these things can be managed through accurate driver pay. So what is the process? If you're a LoadTrek customer, and about half the audience here today is a LoadTrek customer, if you're a LoadTrek customer, then you should know what the process is. If you're a guest joining us, I'll run through this. Number one is the customer. In LoadTrek's universe, and this is what makes a LoadTrek different from pretty much any other system you've ever seen, he who pays the bills is the center of the LoadTrek universe. If you are a private fleet and you do nothing but haul food for your own company who is paying your bills to operate your fleet is the center of your universe. If you're a postal contractor hauling for the United States Postal Service, the post office is the center of your universe. If you're a truckload carrier, then Kellogg's is the center of your universe. Whoever pays the bills is the center of your universe, and to that customer are attached jobs and loads. Jobs and loads are used interchangeably. If you're in the construction or oil field business, we call it jobs. If you're hauling stuff up and down the road, we call it loads. Either way, you have a customer who pays the bills. This customer will give us a job or a load to do, and attached to the load are tasks and rates. So tasks, rates, jobs, and loads are all attached back to that customer, and then we take that work and we organize it into a dispatch, or what we call the plan. Now here's the deal with the plan. Our customer is always right. Your customer is always right. But just because they're always right doesn't mean they're always accurate. And your customer may always be right, but they may not always know trucking. So sometimes we have to help them out a little bit. Sometimes they expect us to do things that can't be done safely, can't be done legally, sometimes can't be done at all. So a dispatch plan is a safe, legal plan, because those are the two keys, safe, legal plan, that as much as possible meets customer requirements. Therefore, we know that if we give the driver this dispatch plan and we don't bust the plan, we adhere to the plan, the customer is happy, your company is happy, we're safe, we're compliant. If you don't break the given plan, you are compliant, you are safe, you did not speed, you did not make any unauthorized stops, the customer gets their stuff on time, everybody's happy. Therefore, in the LoadTrek world, adherence to the route plan is very important, and everything else takes a back seat. We only react when we need to. Drivers get into their vehicles. Sometimes they're heavy trucks, sometimes they're Jeeps, transit vans, small straight trucks. Drivers get into their vehicles, log into their telematics device. The telematics device may or may not have ELD functions, depends on whether it's required or not. And this device in the cab of the truck simply acts as a time clock. Driver accepts their dispatch, and from that moment forward, from the time the driver accepts the dispatch, every activity by that driver and by that truck is attached back to that customer for what I like to think of as a real-time P&L. We have the information to measure actual versus benchmarks, and with this information, we can assess drivers' activities, shippers' activities, receiver activities. We can change the dispatch if we needed, address anything that comes up on the road concerns, deal with customers, shippers, receivers, all by properly managing payroll. Let me show you what this looks like. So we bid the work based on what we think our estimated costs are going to be and the market. We bid work. Do we get the work? We may not. We bid the work. If we get the work, we go perform the work. So question number one, when we measure the plan versus actual, did we actually perform the work? They gave us 4 stops to make. Did we make 4 stops? Did we make 5? Did we make 3? Did we perform the work? And who is doing what, and what are we paying them? How many drivers touched this load? What are we paying the drivers? Which brings us to our expenses as we expect. This is key because if you've ever been in a company, or if you're currently in a company and you've ever wondered why the cash flow that you're experiencing doesn't quite match up with what you were expecting. We should be profitable. Cash flow is going the wrong direction. Cash is bleeding out of this business somewhere. One way to manage this in real time is what we call plan versus bench versus actual. In other words, it all ties into driver payroll, hence the emphasis on driver payroll. Here's what it looks like. We have 3 columns, a plan, a bench, and an actual. Let me explain these columns. You are looking at a driver timesheet. You are looking at a real driver for a real customer on a real day back in June. The first column is the plan from the customer. We can see for this pay week, the pay week started on June 1st, ended on June 7th. We can see for this pay week, our customer, who's identified by the number 38695, gave us 37.92 hours of work to do. That's what they gave us to do. That's what we're getting paid for. Next column, our plan for the driver. We believe that in order to accomplish 37.92 hours of work, we have to have a driver and a truck and a trailer tied up for 38.18 hours. There is always a difference between the plan and the bench. You don't get paid for every activity you do. Your customer's not going to pay you to fuel the truck, not going to pay you to pre-trip the truck. The customer doesn't care if you have to deadhead from across the street or across the state to get to their dock to pick up their load. They just want the truck there. So there's always a difference between the plan and the bench. So the plan is what the customer gives us. The bench is what we give the driver. And then lastly, the actual amount of work. So we can see here that the driver, this driver, performed the work that was given to him or her in 36.87 hours. So it's as simple as this. Do I validate this timesheet or not? And the answer here is obviously yes. We got paid to do 37.92 hours of work. We predicted it would take the driver 38.18 hours, and the driver did it in less time than both the bench and the plan, 36.87. Clearly, we're operating within plan. Clearly, we're legal. Clearly, we didn't go speeding. We didn't make any unauthorized stops. And what you see below is a small snippet or a graphic representation of a DOT log with the stops superimposed, so you can see where any stops were made. Here we have, this happens to be an SCA contract, so this is a postal contract, and we categorize our customers by type. So this is type postal and a total. So how do we know these three columns? And the answer is it's all in the dispatch. So let's look at a dispatch. These loads can come from several different places. They can come in electronically. They can be put in on a timer or a schedule, or you can just hand enter them on a keyboard the old school way. Either way, here we have a load called Trip 801, and this is a load that this particular driver did from Memphis to Hattiesburg. It started at 2020, and we were done with this load at 02:30 the next day. So that's Trip 801 from Memphis to Hattiesburg, for which we got paid $528.16. And we have another load coming back from Hattiesburg to Memphis, started at 02:30. We're done at 08:40, and we get paid $528.16. So this is what we get paid to do. Memphis to Hattiesburg, Hattiesburg to Memphis. It looks something like this. The driver's dispatch looks something like this. Very simple dispatch. What I have circled in red here, this is what we get paid to do. This is the plan. Memphis, Hattiesburg, Hattiesburg, Memphis, 37.92. That's the plan. That's what we get paid for. But if I look at my dispatch, what I've outlined in red here is what we must pay the driver. This adds in the stem time. Stem time is the time it takes to pre-trip the truck, get in the truck, get prepared for the day, drive the truck to the first revenue producing stop, do what the customer asks us to do. At the end of the job or the load, drive the truck back to the domicile, perform the post-trip inspection, and leave. So the stem time is kind of like a Big Mac sandwich. The stem time is the bun. The meat in the middle is what we get paid for, and the stem time includes everything we pay the driver for. So that's what plan looks like. That's what bench looks like. What does the actual look like? Because that's what we're going to pay. That's what happened. And the actual looks like this. This is an overnight trip. So we began here at about 2000 hours. And we ended the next day at about 0900. So we can see here that for this pay week, which encompasses the 7 days that I've outlined, 36.87. So the plan is what the customer gives us. The bench is what we created for a dispatch. We hand this dispatch to the driver, and for the week, we clearly had no problems, no late deliveries, no delays, no diversions. Everything went exactly according as planned. Simple as that. Here's another slightly more complicated dispatch where we have 3 different customers, 3 different companies that fall under 2 different types, both SCA or federal government contract work versus straight up freight. So our plan for the customers in this column, benches in this column, total hours are in this column, so we can see that this particular driver worked 49.05 hours and the bench was 51.55. Again, the customer or the driver rather performed better than our expectations. And as we go down the list, we can see that 2 of these customers we consider postal, so we know that those are SCA customers and all the SCA pay rates and benefit packages apply. And then we have another customer, Schneider National, and they're the type of customer that this particular company calls a 54,000A, or a type of a freight customer. Here's another example of the same thing. We have a few more customers in here, but again, we have 62.99 hours against a bench of 64.58. You'll notice the plan doesn't carry through. Sometimes when we're taking loads over the phone, we don't really have time to enter in a good plan, and we just let the mapping software do the work. And in that case, we have bench versus actual. A supervisor, somebody who knows what's going on with the drivers, could be a manager, dispatch supervisor, fleet supervisor, transportation supervisor, somebody who's in charge, who knows what to expect from the drivers, validates, approves the pay, adjusts the pay as needed, and there's a couple ways of doing that, which is the subject of another webinar. Once the pay is adjusted, approved, confirmed, we call that validated. When you click validated, the pay gets sent to payroll, and it looks something like this. There's 3 ways of getting pay in your system. We're looking at a report, and this report can be exported as a CSV, as a spreadsheet. And when that's done, you can manipulate it, import it into a system, do whatever you choose to do with it. Or for some systems are customized. Every company seems to do payroll a little different. You can set up an API, and this API automatically feeds information from the LoadTrek system to whoever you designate as your payroll provider. You have complete control over this. You can turn them on, you can turn them off, you can dictate what they see. You control the information you send to your outsourced provider, but you can do that. Or lastly, many of our customers have an in-house pay package, and there's APIs set up between some of the more common accounting systems, such as NetSuite, Great Plains, things like that. Venturing into some territory that can be a little confusing, it certainly is for me, is this whole world of SCA pay, Service Contract Act. One of the things we have to do is we have to calculate the holiday pay for drivers based on how many hours they work. So this report does exactly that. And again, it can be printed, it can be exported, it can be sent via an API. There's several ways of getting it out of here, but it takes the driver's day, breaks it down by customer. And again, different customers may have different pay rates. In fact, in our world, many times, almost always, different customers do have different pay rates. Breaks them down by customer, breaks it down by type, and of the 40 hours a week that would apply to holiday pay, what % of that did we reach for the driver for this time period? We do all that automatically for you. So let's talk about how to get started. This isn't as complicated as it may seem. I like to say that it's simple, may not be easy. So let me explain. First off, you have to get a system. Again, we have a lot of people on the call today. About half of you are LoadTrek clients and about half of you are not. If you're using another system, that's fine. Get with them and figure it out. If you're looking for a system, call us. Once you get your system, and I'm going to kind of aim the rest of this for LoadTrek users, get some help to set up your system. It's the little things that matter. Good, accurate, tight geofences matter. Locations matter. Not having duplicate locations matters a lot. We see this at some of our older customers. They may service a location for years, stop servicing them several years ago, and then get asked to service them again without looking, re-enter a second location, and imagine a computer's confusion when the truck drives into a location and it sees 2 locations and 2 geofences. Which one is it going to grab? So setup is very important. We have a specific plan and outline we like to go through, but get help with your setup and then organize your dispatch. Once we have our customers set up, and that's step number 1, have our locations and geofences set up, that's step 2 and 2A. Then step 3 is to get our loads set up, and there's several different ways of getting loads into the system. However you get them in, organize these loads. Sometimes if they're cross-country loads, you'll need to build in relays. Sometimes if they're plant loads, like in a backhaul basis, and maybe a drop and hook of a trailer, maybe switching drivers, switching tractors, build your loads, tweak it according to plan. We highly encourage our customers to build in the 30-minute required break. I know there's rumors the 30-minute break may be going away. If it does, it won't be for a year or 2 anyway. So build in that 30-minute break, and to reduce some waste, build it around an authorized fuel stop. Get your dispatch in order, organize your work, set up your scheduler if you want, and then get your drivers user ELDs. The telematics systems that are used for LoadTrek are more than just an ELD. We were doing this long before logs were required. And in the LoadTrek system, that device in the cab of the truck is not just a tattletale logging device. It's there to help the driver. It's there to protect the driver. When there's a disagreement between the customer and the company, were you on time, were you not on time? The device in the cab of the truck is the impartial witness. The device in the cab of the truck, in my experience, is on the driver's side more than it is on the other party's side. So the drivers have to use their ELDs. Furthermore, if you're paying off the system, it's your time clock. It's how you get paid. Drivers use their ELDs. They clock in, perform their work, they clock out. As soon as the driver is done, it can happen the same day, it can happen the same hour. The supervisor validates completed work. We recommend that LoadTrek customers do not wait until the end of the week or the end of the pay period to validate. We recommend that LoadTrek customers validate yesterday's pay today, every day of the week. That way it's always caught up. Once that pay is validated, then it goes to the payroll system, and if there's a third-party benefits administrator like FCE, then a direct API feed into their system. So that brings us to any questions. I appreciate your patience. Going to try to make this as rapid as possible to fit into the 30-minute lunch break here, but let me go through questions. Again, if you haven't submitted any questions yet, hurry up, send them to joelbeal@loadtrek.net. And here we go. Question number one, where do the loads come from? Please elaborate. And I guess I didn't elaborate, so thank you. Loads can come from the following sources. And I don't recognize your name and I don't recognize your company, so in no particular order. Number one, loads can come from EDI. If you're working for one of the big retailers, like say an Amazon or somebody like that, loads will come in via EDI. EDI is 30-year-old, 40-year-old technology. And these loads come in as internet loads into your LoadTrek system that you can either right-click and accept or reject. So the first place that loads come from is EDI. The second is very similar to EDI. It's some other form of electronic communications, perhaps a more modern form. Several of the shippers that our customers work with do this. They have another schema to bring in the loads. Again, it shows up in your dispatch the same. Shows up as an internet load. You can accept it or reject it, and when you accept it or reject it, then it sends that message back to the shipper. Third, for private fleets many times have a warehouse management system. They're hauling their own stuff, and generally they're hauling their own stuff to their own customers. And in many cases, there's multiple stops, many different SKUs. Some of our customers have 14,000 SKUs. You're not going to have everything all the time. So what the customer orders may not be exactly what you're going to get. You make substitutions. In the end, it's the warehouse management system that determines what gets loaded on the truck. And the warehouse management system, in some cases, in many cases, sends us the loads. And then lastly, it's the old school way, typing it in, just hand entering the load. If it's a recurring load, it can be set up on a schedule. The schedule can be simple, can be complicated, doesn't really matter. If it's a single load, then you just enter it once and be done. So that's where loads come from. Hope that helps. Question number two, what if a driver is mostly a mechanic? And not much elaboration on that question, so let me kind of talk about that. If the mechanic holds a CDL, then we know that that mechanic must have what FMCSA calls an account, what we call a driver number. That mechanic has to log their time anyway. If that's the case, then the mechanic does need, for regulatory purposes, needs to log all their time. They have to. If they're going to do that, you might as well pay them off that time. And there's a couple ways of doing it. You can use a driver kiosk. There's a phone app Or they can log into any telematics device. Some of our customers will have a telematics training device in a driver's room just for drivers to practice on. And any of those things will work. The mechanic will clock into the LoadTrek system using one of those three methods, just like a time clock. They clock in, they clock out. For example, if you clock in at 0600, then at 1000, you have to go take a truck somewhere. You simply go to the truck, clock into the truck, and that 4 hours from when you showed up to work to when you got to that truck will show up on your log in the truck. If your mechanics don't hold a CDL, they're not required to log. It's still not a bad idea to have them in the system to pay them as you would a driver, where you treat the LoadTrek as a time clock. You would simply set up the mechanic as an employee, as a driver, but using a non-hours of service HOS profile so that they don't have hours of service. They don't create logs. They're just clocking in time. Hope that helps. And the third question is somewhat related to that. Pay hourly office staff, question mark. So I guess this means how do you pay hourly office staff? And the answer is very much the same. If they hold a CDL, many of our clients are family-owned businesses, and the owners, the president, the vice presidents, the family that runs the place has CDLs. Again, if you have a CDL, you have to log it. Same answer as a mechanic. If you don't have a CDL, not a bad idea. Either way, same answers apply. Phone app to clock in and out, Android app to clock in and out, any telematics device, whether it's a practice device in the office or one in the truck, since you're office staff, you could do it the hard way and just manually enter your time every day into the computer system. Doesn't really matter how you do it. So with that, it is 1:30. I do appreciate your time. Tony, thank you for joining us. You got off easy today, but you probably won't the next time. Come see us. Our sales and training office is at 609 East Main in Arlington. A lot of good things happening in downtown Arlington. We'd love to see you down there. Sign up for the next class if you haven't done it. Visit our YouTube page. This video will be archived and on the YouTube page within 48 hours. Follow our Twitter. Follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us and have a good day. Take care.